The 4th of May, every year on Kent State University campus, a commemoration takes place. This year, on the 50th anniversary, from a distance, one more time, people acknowledged and mourned the deaths of 4 students at the hands of the Ohio National Guard in 1970. I'm sorry that the National Guard murdered those 4 white middle-class students, but I hope readers will pardon me if I don't get too riled about it. I don't mean that it doesn't matter that they died or that the 9 other students wounded should not be acknowledged. It's just, I've never quite shared the shock that our own American authorities would murder our innocent citizens. Like, what else is new? I grew up in neighborhoods where most teenage citizens knew that the police at times were dangerous people who might harm us for no good reason. We knew the fear of unprovoked attack from authorities because it was an everyday possibility. Citizens of color of almost any age in almost any neighborhood also knew that experience. Anyone familiar with the history of working people in this country would know that thousands of Americans have been killed or maimed by police and National Guardsmen in the 150 years before the Kent State Massacre. The Jackson State shootings that killed 2 African American students and wounded 30 more 10 days later also represented business as usual for many of us. Our government has a long history of killing its citizens. One particularly poignant story ironically begins with a May 4th massacre. Only it took place in 1886, over 80 years before Kent State. When police entered Haymarket Square in Chicago to break up a rally of families fighting for the 8-hour day, someone threw a bomb at the police. The explosion killed 1 officer, and his comrades mortally wounded 7 of their own when they opened fire on the mostly unarmed crowd of men, women, and children. No record was made of how many of the crowd were killed or wounded, but all the police deaths were blamed on the bomb. And the mainstream media claimed that this was the beginning of an insurrection. Throughout Chicago, working-class activists were rounded up and jailed without warrants. Finally, since authorities could not find out who threw the bomb, they charged the leaders of the 8-hour day movement with the murders of the police. A little over a year later, after a completely bogus trial, 4 men, Albert Parsons, August Spies, Adolf Fischer, and George Engel, committed activists for workers' rights, were executed. It is clear in the trial record that none of these men knew anything about the bomb, and 3 of them were not even at the May 4th rally when the police arrived. But they were people who made trouble for authority, and for that reason, they were silenced, as so many activists have been throughout the history of the United States. So why were so many of us shocked by the Kent State murders? Is it because the victims were students? Maybe. Many victims of official violence through the years were younger. Perhaps it was just the power of modern media being able to focus on the event. Or maybe it's just that we've never been taught the real history of the American people. Without the knowledge of the past and with no personal experience, it makes sense that so many citizens would not have believed the Kent State murders could happen. If you don't realize how government authority behaves, then you're going to be surprised when it does again what it has so often done. Perhaps it's the other May 4th that really needs to be commemorated. After all, it took the labor movement 50 years after Haymarket to regain the momentum to get us that 8-hour day as the law of the land. It came through the blood of textile workers, coal miners, steel workers, and the millions of laborers who risked their lives and livelihood to fight the United States government and its corporate clients. And the struggle continues now as we move through this pandemic with the $15 an hour minimum wage and the guaranteed annual income and the universal health care and paid family and health leave that people are fighting for. And it is time. It's time that the United States joins the rest of the democratic world.